live at this point, and then we can get the meeting started. Just let me know.
I think Vilu asked to give him a big thumbs up so you can see it.
We're on the air.
Robertsfield Advisory Committee Board meeting. It's been a long time since we've all been together. I know this is unprecedented times, and so I appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to meet with us at this hour. I know usually we meet in the evenings, but you know, given the state of everything going on, today worked out well for us. So I appreciate everybody, you know, adjusting their schedule to accommodate something together. So what I'd like to do today is, you know, get things started by calling the meeting to order. Everything is being broadcasted live, and we are recording as well. If there's any other input or information from the group that needs to be mentioned at this point, let me know. So, Bill, anything else we need to mention before we move on to the agenda?
Did anyone hear from Adele or Justin? Are they expected to join?
So Adele is not able to join. I have not heard from Justin. So I think we'll start by, you know, I know that Bill, you had sent out an offer publicly to see if anybody wanted to send any questions over. So do you know, has there been any feedback from that at this point for public input? Should we start there?
I think if you go to the next slide, that we did receive one comment.
Okay, perfect. There we go. All right. Let's see. So this is from Carrie. So as Carrie asks, thanks so much for all the effort that has been put into the park. I read over the last information and was happy to see the way forward. Knowing how the park has been used, I wanted to add one comment. When the park gets full, people start parking in the grass and field. I have noticed this as well. There was mention of additional parking. I wanted to also suggest fencing, gates, or barriers to prevent selfish people from driving right into the green areas. Thanks again for all that your group is doing. It's a wonderful improvement. We'll address the parking situation later on, so we do have that on the agenda. As far as gates and barriers, you know, we do have the rocks that are there. I don't know if there's going to be anything additional added, but we can obviously explore that and figure out if there's, you know, areas where we need to possibly, I guess, add rocks if we need to.
I think those rocks have helped. It seems that was a key location where people were going. So.
Yes. I mean, I know it was kind of that was a tough pill to swallow because we wanted those rocks for the play area.
Yeah.
Because of insurance, but I think it was a good repurpose of those in any event. So I
agree. And now the kids can climb on them without liability.
Yeah, right. There you go. They're still doing it anyway. So, but I think that what we can do is look at if there are other areas that might be more open and we, you know, notice anybody parking. If we see tire tracks or something, maybe we want to think about what we can put there. And I know parking has been a topic of conversation. We'll get into that. Bill, I know I've mentioned it to you, and I know they've done surveys, and we'll get into the survey to determine, you know what the capacity is a little bit later. Were there any other questions, Bill, that you got, or anything coming through right now?
No, that's it for now. But I would encourage that if there are folks watching, if they do have any questions or comments, they can. We're monitoring this live, so if you want to email a question to questions@robertsfield.org, we can try to address it live, although there will be some delay in the broadcast. But we'll give it our best shot.
Absolutely. All right, so I think that ends the input session of our agenda, so we'll move on. And I thought it'd be a good idea for us at this point just to review the existing Robertsfield Advisory Committee board members and roles and see if there might be any changes that need to be made or additions. Then we can go over and review the master plan improvements that were set out at the beginning of the committee being put together. And I thought just because it's been so long since we've all met, just kind of level set everything and say, okay, here's what this committee was put together to do. let's all agree that this is still our mission and what we're going to move forward with. And then we can tackle kind of what projects remain. Then I know, Bill, you wanted to address what's been going on with the Friends of Roberts Field and all the projects that you've been working on. So we'll go over and address that. We'll vote on any necessary topics that we need to, if anything comes up, and then we'll set up and schedule our next future meeting. Okay. So let me move forward here with just kind of highlighting who I have as the current board members. So right now it's myself, Marcus Bush, and Elizabeth Barbaro as the co-chairs, Justin Whitehouse as the secretary, and then Bill, Adele, and Tamika as members. And we do have an open seat available. I want to just ask the committee and put out there, is there anyone that we're missing? Has there been anybody that's put forward interest in joining the committee?
Haven't asked, but I think we can start, if we're gonna be meeting on a consistent basis, I think we can start kind of promoting that. And by the way, welcome, Tamika. This is your first full meeting with us. I think Tamika's still here.
Did we lose Tamika?
Yes, Tamika, welcome. Sorry,
I'm
this
sorry.
is how we're meeting for the first time. Welcome to the committee.
I actually like this, and I'm sorry, I put myself on mute, so, but thank you. I'm happy to be a member.
Absolutely. Thank you, and appreciate you helping us out with this. It's definitely a large undertaking. We have a lot of work to do, so we need all the help we can get, of course. All right, so now that we're all in agreement on this, I guess, are there any other positions, and I hate to push this on you, Bill, but I'm curious. I know we have the co-chairs, we have the secretary. What other roles can you think of that we would need within the committee that we don't have filled right now?
I think by rule of law, I think you only have to have a chair and a secretary. Everything else is sort of up to the committee.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, I'm not familiar with what the other roles might be. Having been in this a while, do you have any advice on that as far as, are there other roles that we could look at maybe adding into the committee that someone might want to volunteer for, or do you think we're, there could be, I know that.
It just depends on how you guys want to split. It just depends on how you guys want to split up the responsibilities,
Okay.
I mean, it's functioned for since 2015 with a chair. At some point, we had a vice chair and then the secretary or clerk, whatever that title would be.
So that's the same. Okay, so there's nothing difference there. Okay, and then so there's really, I guess, so there really is no other roles that would need to have a definitive title to it then that you guys can think of. Okay.
Again,
May I make a quick comment?
Sure, of course,
I will
Barry.
continue to support you guys. If becoming a member, I see you got an open seat there, will be helpful. I'll do that. I don't think it's necessary. It leaves the seat open for somebody else that might want to join. But you can indicate however you want on that.
I think it would make a lot of sense for you to join. You've been more involved than some of the members for years, so I support you joining us as a member.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too, Barry. I mean, if you're up for it, I know you're already on the Friends of Roberts Field. So if you feel like it's too much to commit to actually being on the committee, I understand that. But if you're up for it, I don't think there's a limit to how many members we can have, is there?
7.
Oh, it is. It's 7. Okay.
So it's a sort of a strategy point. The question is it, if I don't join it, it just leaves a seat open.
It does.
And it makes it,
Okay.
it gives you an opportunity to slide someone else that might want to actually join on. It doesn't affect my involvement one way or another. I'll continue the various efforts that I've been involved with. You guys, I really.
I guess the big difference, Barry, is it would give you the ability to vote if you were a member, right?
It would give you the ability to vote, and it would break the current 3-3 tie that we have, and I don't really feel like anyone's beating down the door to try to join the committee, so I think it would help us personally.
All right. All right, I'll do it.
Great.
Excellent.
So you just need to apply to the town manager, and then there may be some delay. The board will have to vote for it. The board of selectmen will have to vote on it.
Okay.
But you can still attend the meetings and all.
Well, as I said for the Friends, as long as I don't have to show up or actually do anything, I'm fine.
Okay.
Duly noted. All right. Any other topics around just, again, general board members and responsibilities from anybody else? I think we got a good handle on it. Okay. Excellent. All right. So this is the original, I believe, site plan that was put out a couple years ago. As you can see, we have the park here, which is pretty much completed. And then this is really phase 2, which is setting up the baseball diamonds and then the lacrosse field. I think, we can probably have a little bit of discussion around where we're at in that process. I was hoping to have this, one of the Steves join from the DPW, but they sent me an email shortly before this saying that they won't be able to join. I do have, let me see if I can pull up an email with one of their updates.
I'm sorry, I've lost track. Are we still doing 2 baseball fields?
I believe we are, yes.
Okay.
Unless anyone said otherwise. Okay.
It's in Steve's site plan. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So
I thought at one point there had been discussion about doing 1 because of the water on the right-hand side. I just didn't remember.
As far as I know, we're still scheduled for 2. So I'm going to read the email that Steve just had sent me prior to the meeting, just so everybody can kind of get up to speed on what he's sharing. So he just says, a quick update on our end. My timelines for the field reconstruction are on hold at this point. With no conservation committee and DEP only doing limited work, I cannot get permits necessary. We were narrowing in on final fitness equipment, but I have not gotten a response from the vendor, and I'm not sure if they are working or not. Again, due to, I guess, current situations. We stockpiled the old infield clay for reuse and tore down the old backstop and also removed a few piles at Bill's request in the edge of the woods prior to us going on modified crews. So what it sounds like to me here is that based on the current, coronavirus situation, they're running modified crews, so they have limited time to be able to provide resources to the park, and or also he's having a hard time getting permits. So it sounds like his work is at this point on pause.
That makes a lot of sense. It really does. And I've heard about this with other committees in town too, going through this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We got to get through this all together. So I did know, Bill and I have talked, and, Barry, I think we talked about this too, is that, while the park is closed at this current time, it may provide an opportunity for us to be able to get some work done and make some improvements. So we can talk about that, but I think, we all have to be responsible in our efforts in doing so, where obviously we're not going to gather in large groups or anything like that. So if somebody did want to, make an improvement to the park or do some work on it, we'd probably want to coordinate that and make sure that there was, limited individuals there.
To that, I would also say that if you do want to do something there at the park, the first person you should contact is Steve Callahan.
Right.
He's been good about coordinating that kind of stuff.
Okay, good. All right, so moving on, this was the original feature and improvement recommendations that were put out by the committee, like I said, again, a couple of years ago. I wanted to bring these up to make sure, one, what have we completed? And then, of what we haven't, are we still in line that we want to continue forward with this? So the larger natural playground, that has obviously been completed, so that's great. Probably our biggest accomplishment so far, which is fantastic. The athletic fields we know are being worked on. That is obviously something we want to continue to do, but is that on pause. The Pondside Multi-Use Picnic Pavilion. Does anybody know exactly what that was? I can't remember that being.
Yeah, it's a
focus.
It's a shade structure, and it's not included in phase 2.
It's not, okay. Is it included in phase 3 or anything like that, or did we just not focusing on it right now?
If you want, we can talk about it when we get to the other projects slide. But
Okay.
it's he's going to add it to the site plan as a potential future thing, but it will need to discuss how do you fund those kinds of things and all that stuff.
Okay.
Can I just throw out a quick comment? I have a Gantt chart that I have created that has most of this, not all of this stuff on there. What I can do is, now that we have this, a little guidance from Bill. Bill's actually giving me a lot of the input for that. And it basically lays out a timeline over the next year to year and a half. And we can put stuff on that Gantt chart, and I believe, well, at minimum, I can send you guys each a PDF. But I think I can actually give you access to the website. It's just a matter, right now I've got a free subscription to the Team Gantt. But it does give a nice picture about, it gives us a way to track what's partly done or been accomplished, and what's targeted at what point in time. And we could
That sounds
review
great,
that
Barry.
We could review that at a future meeting.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great. I had received that, I think, from Adele, and I was going to share it today, but I believe that there was some updating that needed to be done to it, so I left it off. But if you want to update it and then send it over, we can definitely include it for the next meeting.
And that's fine, because it'll never be totally up to date. That's the whole purpose of it. It's a plan in progress.
That's true.
So we can keep working it, and I'll keep updating it
Yep.
as we make decisions together.
I think that's absolutely right. That's perfect. Okay, so we'll make sure we, I think that's something we can definitely include next time and use going forward. So thank you, Barry, for recommending that. All right, so the walking trail and exercise circuit. So we know we're obviously working on that, and the updates there is that I think everything's on hold from the exercise circuit based on what Steve had sent over to us. Not sure if the vendor is working or not, so we'll see if we can get some future updates on that later. Portable bathroom enclosure, I think that was scrapped, right? Because we're doing
No, it's not scrapped.
No.
It's not scrapped. It's still in the realm of possibility. It's just there's no funding for it currently.
Yeah,
And
the
it
idea was an enclosure for putting the portable bathrooms within it so that you'd have a shade structure type thing over the portable bathrooms.
Right.
And
No,
maybe
you're
a
right. Okay.
seat or something for changing small children outside.
Okay. No, you're right. I was thinking of an actual bathroom facility for some reason, which I knew we weren't going to do. Okay, so that's something we're definitely going to keep on there. The Hardscape play area. Was that the rock spill?
No, that was
No,
the
that's-
basketball hoop over by the fire engine area.
Oh, okay. Are we
Maybe like a 4-square outline on the ground or something.
okay?
Basically a place where people could do some ball type things over
Okay.
in front of the shed or whatever we call the big structure barn.
Okay.
People
That's
could be
still in the
realized.
plan.
That's not in phase 2, and it's not in the DPW's future plans at this point.
Okay. I'll take a note of that.
Is that not in the plans because they don't want to do it, or is it not in the plans because of some other reason?
I don't know.
It's probably could be budget, could be timing. I mean, I can ask it, so I'll ask. It's similar to the pavilion. It's kind of one of those things where it's just not a priority right now, I guess, for them. So I'll just take a list of kind of what, again, isn't number one priority or phase 2, and then we can figure out when it might be phased in if possible.
Right. I just want to make sure that things that, if the committee has voted against doing things, it's one thing. If people don't want to follow through with what the committee voted to do, that's something different. And I just want to establish that.
So I think as a committee, I mean, I have nothing against having the Hardscape play area. Does anybody want to weigh in on that? Do we think it should be striked from the plan, or are we good with leaving it and just trying to figure out what phase it falls in?
I think
I
it's
think
worthwhile.
we're-
I think some of the concept was that you'd give an area for maybe older teenagers to play, a half hoop basketball, or, older siblings of kids playing on the fields. I think it was to try to give a little more breadth to the play in terms of age range for the fields.
And I think that if it's in the master plan recommendations, we should try to follow through with it.
Okay, that's fine. So in there, and I'll note it as just not part of phase 2 right now. All right, so then upper and lower parking lots, which we'll discuss. Obviously, those are staying there. Engine 3 driveway. Does anybody know
They've,
about
yes, yeah, it's fixing the swale by the road, and the DPW's done that.
They already did that. Okay.
Sorry, it's a what in the soil?
The swale, they called it. It's there was a conduit that was broken through, and the ground next to the driveway was giving way, and they filled it in with stone.
So that's done. The DPW Parks garage. They were going to
It's
replace.
been completed.
or-
They replaced the roof and repainted the exterior, so it's done.
So that's done. Okay. The park welcome area. I know we're working on that. We got the signage, right? I don't know if
No,
this is for the playground. Actually, this is for the overall park, right?
Yeah, that was supposed to be
Correct.
its
And
own
it's-
separate little rock sign garden-ish
Right.
area.
And that's not included in phase 2 currently.
Okay.
No, you haven't started on that, have you? Has that been part of what you?
No, no, that's a totally separate thing.
Okay. Natural park area improvements. Is there any elaborate?
That included dredging the pond, which Steve is still planning on doing, just pulling permits and doing it when the pond dries out at some point in the future. Also included an aerating fountain in the pond, which there's no funding currently earmarked for, and invasive removal, which is going to be partly addressed somewhat in the phase 2, but there's still going to be a need for more.
You're talking about the bittersweet, Bill?
Correct.
Okay. But the dredging of the pond, would you say that's not in phase 2? Because they're going to...
I would say that's correct. It's not in phase 2, but it's in his plans to get the, from what Steve Yonley told me, it's in his plans to pull the permitting and to have the permitting on file, so that when we have a summer like we had a couple years ago where the pond dried out completely, they can get heavy machinery in there and dig out the pond in the silted over areas.
Okay. All right. And then last, I think was on here was safety improvements, which I think includes like cameras and that sort of thing. And does anybody know anything about that?
Yeah, they've got one camera installed, and they have, I believe, the cameras purchased. They allocated funds at the last town meeting to purchase additional cameras, and they have found a location to install them. But that was the last that I heard.
Bill, could you say that again? They've got what, 1 or 2 cameras installed?
They have one camera, but I think it's mainly it's over by the fire station. But they have plans, and I think they've purchased the other camera because they allocated funds for it at the last town meeting. They have plans to mount another camera directly inside the playground. I believe it was on that pole that's right outside of it. That will look into it. So it's a wireless camera. I think they needed some sort of clearance to make it work.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. So we got one, we got the other one, so that's definitely still on the list. So Great. I'll compile the ones that are not in phase 2, and I'll rework this slide and just kind of separate what's been done, what's in phase 2, and what we're working towards in phase with, or what's not in phase 2 and what we're working towards in phase 2 right now, and update that for next time.
Marcus, I'd be happy to work with you on that, and I'll tap Bill too. Because I'd like to get on the Gantt chart. Gantt has actually 2 files to it. One is notes, and what I'm trying to do is fill the notes with more explanation of what some of these line items are.
Okay, great.
So we can work as a team on that one.
Okay. All right, anybody have anything else on this slide as far as what the original future and improvement recommendations were?
Sorry, I missed, did you mention something about the national park area improvements?
Yeah, Bill had gone over that. That was the dredging of the pond.
Oh, okay.
Cutting
Sorry.
back at the bittersweet and all that stuff.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Oh, wrong way. Okay, so committee considered park feature and improvement list. So this is like a really big list of individualized park features that were put in place. New larger playground we did, bathroom facility we talked about, more parking we're going to address, security cameras we talked about, lighting was an issue. Are we? Has anything been done on lighting? Does anybody know since then? Should that be on something that we want to continue to tackle?
I don't remember what the lighting issue was. I know as it says in the notes, there's no nighttime use of the park, so I don't remember what the theory was on lighting.
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, there is no nighttime use, so.
If my memory serves at all, there was a security concern on that, that there was enough light to at least identify if people were inappropriately at the park at night. I could be wrong, but that would be the motivation that I would imagine.
Okay. I mean, I know people like to go and look at the stars on the field and stuff, so adding extra, and nighttime light affects wildlife and such, so I don't, since it's not supposed to be used at night, I don't think we need a lot of lighting personally.
I tend to agree with
What we'll
that.
do is from here, Barry, because to your point, if it's a safety issue, I think what we'd probably want to do is just, I guess, have a conversation with, town police or the town chief, and just have them reassess the park and say, hey, is there a safety issue here or not? Is that kind of a fair assessment than what we should probably look at doing, or?
Might want to find out if there's been a problem there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem. There's currently a light by the pond and a light by the playground.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any more problem than there ever. I mean, people park there at night, but I don't think it's
No
not
issue.
like they're hidden in the. It's not like they're hidden in the back.
Okay. So it's not something that we need to focus on right now. Okay.
Yeah. And just this list wasn't. This list was just a comprehensive list of suggested improvements and then what was accepted and what wasn't accepted, and sort of why. So it's not the feature list you went over before is really the one that I think we should be looking
That
at.
we ended up with? Okay.
You see the basketball court note about the half court and the four square and the hopscotch? That was
I
what we
do.
were talking about before, or
Mhm.
might be good for older kids.
Yep.
Mhm.
So
Totally
I
get
think
that.
I think given that it was definitely something we accepted and expected, I understand it should not be prioritized, but I do think that it would be good to have as we go forward as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely, we can keep it on there. And I know, obviously, protecting area wildlife, that's important. We'll obviously keep that. More open space, nature trails, of course, the pavilion we talked about over by the pond, walking track, of course, exercise circuit machines, yes. The bandstand performance pavilion, I do not think I think that was voted against, right? Yeah.
All of the things below that are rejected.
Yeah.
They weren't-
These
Those
were
are
all
all
rejected
rejected.
down here. Oh,
Yep.
there we go. Yeah. Oh, it's okay. Makes sense. Okay. So we're all in agreement, I guess, on what was accepted. We'll continue to work, I guess, except for the lighting. It's not anything we really need to worry about.
Yeah, was that light over by the playground there prior to this?
Yes.
been. Maybe it was
Okay.
added because of
So
this.
I don't know what the specifics were that we accepted in terms of that. So, I mean, maybe we need to go back and make sure that we are all still in alignment if we did previously accept it, but yeah.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions on this?
I guess my question is how the list was identified.
Oh, I found this on the website. Like, where did I get it from?
It's in the master plan. It's
Yeah,
one
it's
of
in
the
the master
appendix.
plan that's on the website.
This whole accept reject thing?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, I guess I'm wondering about the original data for that. Was that from going through notes from the committee meetings?
Where did the committee notes come from? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, this list, I was wondering if that was part of the, what the source of the data was.
I
This-
believe it was from the original
was-
committee, right, Bill?
This
Yeah.
got formed over a period of meetings. I think Bill compiled it, if I remember correctly. And there was a number of discussions in the list group, and then it grew in status
Yeah.
in terms of acceptance.
It's before my time, that's all.
The master plan is posted at robertsfield.org too, if you want to look at the entire document.
That's where I pulled this from, Elizabeth, just so you know. All right, any other questions on this before we move on? Okay. Now onto the traffic study. I wish Steve was here to talk about this, but he's not. So does anybody have any information that they may have gotten from interacting with Steve? I mean, I can read from this, but I haven't.
Yeah, Steve, yes, Steve didn't put this together. This was put together by me and Lieutenant Colin Spence.
Oh, okay.
So I can run through these slides pretty quickly if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great, Bill. Thank you.
Okay, so there were, the CPD put a traffic counter in the parking lot for a week before the new playground got installed, and then for a week after. And this is going to this shows basically the data that they collected over those 2 7-day periods. Right now, there's 98 parking spaces. The master plan had proposed increasing them slightly, just from changing the orientation of the lines. I think Steve has since changed his mind on that and plans to kind of stick with the orientation, the 90-degree orientation that they had before. And you'll see in his
So they're
notes
not
that
intending to increase the slots at all?
So they will currently have, he's in his notes, he says that they'll have about the same that they have now. We're actually going to end up losing a couple because they've added, they will be adding a charging station, 2 spots for a charging station on the, right now it's planned for the upper parking lot, but he was going to check to see if he could put it on the lower parking lot. And that was something that, some sort of a thing that was part of a town-wide thing. They're putting it some other places as well.
Do you know what the time frame on the charging station is?
I don't. And he was going to look
I
and
am
see.
concerned that we're losing spots because the place is packed on nice days. And I know people have but commented to me that people were parking over on the other side of the park where the path is through the woods because there were no spaces left over in the actual parking lot. So I'm sorry.
I was going to ask you, because I've heard this before and it's disturbing. Has this happened? Have you heard these complaints since the ball fields have been sort of decimated and not rebuilt? Or is this back in the days when we had the ball fields? Because
No, this was when it was nice before everything shut down this spring. It was, like a month ago. My friends were trying to get to the park and they couldn't park in the parking lot and they told me they had to park on the rear side of the woods and walk through. So I'm concerned that this previous intent to add some more parking spaces is disappearing. because
I-
with this
yeah.
is, given that this is without ball fields, I don't know what's going to happen when we have ball fields active.
Exactly. I share your concern, but I think it's a bigger concern than even losing a couple of parking places. That's not a big deal. I think at some point we need to have a discussion as a group about a way to expand the parking place, the whole parking area, whether we can get rid of that green section and just, provide multi-tier parking. This is going to be a problem once we get the new ball fields built.
Yeah, and I know I've mentioned that too. With once the ball fields are in and the lacrosse field is in, I think traffic is going to pick up. I think, Bill, we talked about that. I think the answer is when it's a problem, it'll get attention, and at that point is when we'll probably be able to address it. I know that's not ideal and probably the way we want to do it, but that's what
I think it's already a problem, is my comment. I mean, if we already have people parking in the neighborhood on the other side of the park, on the other side of the woods, I think it's already a problem that we should probably be addressing. Do we have the rationale behind Steve not changing the parking so that we aren't I mean, I know it's a couple extra spots. It's not a huge amount, but it is something. Do we have any rationale from Steve as to why he's going forward without doing what was agreed on the plan?
Elizabeth, I can give you a rationale from my own experience. It is not easy getting in and out of that parking lot without banging somebody behind you or hitting somebody, even now with the angled parking places. And once you start having everybody have to back out directly and maneuver, not everybody is great drivers and knows how to handle a vehicle and turn it around in tight places. And I really think you're going to start seeing fender benders and other issues. I don't know. That didn't come from Steve. That's just coming from me. But I share your concern, and I also agree with what Marcus said about. I'm not sure we're quite where we need to be in terms of a general public awareness and DPW awareness that this is a serious issue. But I think that's coming soon. What we might be able to do as a team is to give some thought about what we could do when the time comes. In other words, develop some plans so that when the time actually comes and we can get some funding, the DPW could go forward with that. I mean, you guys are both.
I see here there's like future potential 4 spaces built on there. So I think, and then parking extension. So I guess to your point, Barry, right? As long as we can have some sort of a plan in place so that when we are able to really assess that this is a long-term ongoing problem, or if there's cars parking in the street and neighbors are complaining and it's, raining cats and dogs, then we'll probably get the attention we need. And then we could say, look, hey, here's the plan. We need to find funding for it because it's a big issue.
I think so, because you need a minimum, another row. I'd like to see another pair of rows, but I don't think you've got the room for it. But I think within that time now, you could probably reform that and get at least another row out of it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess my concern is that what it sounded like is that Steve had unilaterally decided that they weren't going to do something that was in the plan, which is not the first time that that's happened. And that's my concern. I believe my original argument way back when we were talking about this is right along the same lines as Barry, that, yeah, it's going to be harder to pull in and out. I agree. People are going to have problems. I also think that we already have people complaining about the parking. So given that it was in the plan to try to improve it a little bit, I'd like to know why it's no longer sounds like it's in the DPW's plan. That's my only statement. And I know it's going to make parking harder.
It's like anything, right? It's going to take, it's going to take somebody who's really passionate about this to make a lot of noise and drive it forward. I mean, that's unfortunately how I think a lot of these things work, right? So, I mean, Bill, I know you worked a lot on the traffic study. I mean, Elizabeth, do you want to work with Bill and, get with Steve and get those questions answered and find out, hey, you know what, how do we move this forward and get more spaces? Because that's what it's going to take, right? We need somebody who's going to be driving this and, making sure it's a priority.
I do have one recommendation is I'd rather not bite at Steve's ankles for something small as 2 or 3 parking places. We've got a bigger issue, and I'd rather work with him to form a plan to figure out what would be viable for something a lot bigger, because, you know, the difference in 3, 4 parking places isn't going to solve the kind of problem. It really isn't. I mean, I think intuition can tell us all that. We need to
Well, yeah, I don't think we need to bite at his ankles.
Right,
I just
but
think
if you
it's
look at
getting
this-
an understanding of what the plan is, that's all.
If you look at this slide, the slide says that we were going to go from 98 up to 113 based on the master plan. That's not 4 spaces. That's, you know, 15 spaces. That's something. It's not going to solve everything, but it's, you know, almost
Right.
15% increase in parking. So that's not nothing. And it's something that was agreed on in the plan. And yes, I agree that things seem to only happen when people have a direct harassment line on it. And B, I also agree that we don't want to be biting at the heels, but 15% is not nothing in terms of parking. That is something, and it was in the plan for a reason. And
So Elizabeth, do you want to follow up with Steve on that, and just to see how that decision was made? It could be budget. I mean, there could be a whole bunch of different things, right? But if you want to just check with him and see where.
I will. I'd just like to know if anyone else in the committee has already had a conversation and knows the reasoning prior to me having another conversation with him about it.
His notes are listed at the bottom of the page. That's the extent of what I know.
Okay, I read
Yeah.
his notes. I'm just looking for,
So-
because I
It's
think
just
one
that he's
problem we
not, the
have
notes basically say he's
repeated,
not going to do it. It doesn't say why.
right.
I'm going to take a
My
guess
only
to say
concern
it's
is
budget,
that
but
my only concern is that historically the notes have not encompassed all of the conversation that has been had. And one of the reasons that I think the DPW gets frustrated is that they get bugged from multiple angles, and not everyone in the committee is aware of all the conversations that have been had. And so then it's hard to understand why Steve is getting frustrated. And if you understand the level of conversation he's previously had with members of the committee, then you start to understand why he might be frustrated. So I'm just asking for, if anyone in the committee knows anything more than these notes prior to me talking to him, I would really appreciate knowing ahead of time so that I'm sensitive to what Steve has already interacted with the committee about. Because there's been a lot of behind the scenes conversation with people, and I am tired of having conversations with Steve where I find out that I'm not the first person and no one else knew what the other conversations were. That's my only concern. So I'm happy to talk to Steve. I just would like to go in educated prior to the conversation.
Yeah.
Totally
I agree.
valid point.
yeah, I think what we know is on this slide at this point. I don't think there's anything else. I don't think anybody's had any other conversations, or I know I haven't. I haven't heard of any, so I think this is what we got.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'll reach out to Steve about it.
Okay. All right, and we'll and just let us know what you find from there. Okay, so that's kind of it. Bill, anything you want to
No,
go?
there's 2 more slides. Just the
Yeah,
actual
anything
data, the car counts. And you can go with this. I know we're gonna be time challenged. We're only on to 1.
I know.
This is the demand, the future demand that's going to come up. And based on the demand and based on where those 2 weeks of data that the police department pulled, the current parking lot may accommodate where we are. I think it would be worthwhile to, once the new fields are installed and these guys are back at it, I think it'd be worthwhile to look at doing a third study to see where the traffic counts fall, and try to make sure that that study falls during the time when baseball and lacrosse is active.
No, I agree. Okay. Let's see, projected tree inventory update.
I'm sorry, can you go back to that previous slide?
Oh, sure.
So it sounds like the statement existing parking spaces may accommodate new demand. Is that something coming from Steve? Is that something coming from someone in the committee? Is that something coming from the police? Where is that information coming from so that I know?
That's coming from me. So that's coming from me.
Okay.
Because based on
Based on this slide here, on this one, Bill, based on
Correct.
this here.
That slide, and based on the future demand that the baseball and lacrosse indicated that they would have for parking.
Okay, I just know that on any nice day when I drive by, the parking lot's pretty full. So I'm not sure how much space we have for, I believe that the demand has probably grown over time. The longer that the park has been there, the more people know that it exists. So I'm guessing that the current not being Corona current, but Corona notwithstanding, I would bet that the current demand is higher than it was just after the park opened when people weren't aware that it was, because it's, I believe, more popular now than it was 2 months after it opened.
So it's just a matter of how we time this to do another study. I think intuitively we kind of know that we're going to have growth in the demand for the park. And the question is, what's the best time when a study will support probably what we already know, and then we could work with Steve.
And then again, I think it just goes back to preparation, right? We can't do anything today, probably, but can we prepare for tomorrow or next year? What does that plan look like, right? So I think, Elizabeth, when you're talking to Steve, just get an understanding, hey, was this study the reason why we didn't add the park, the additional spaces? Was it budget? What was it, right? And then based from there, it's, we anticipate potentially having more demand over the next year. Can we build out a plan to accommodate for that if and when it happens, right?
Yep.
How much where we need to go.
Yep.
I think there's much more we can do there. All right, so the projected tree inventory update. Bill, did you want to go over this,
Well, Jim's on the call, so he may want to cover this, but Jim and I think you were there too at one point, Marcus and Barry, went out and remarked all of the trees and re-inventoried everything. So Jim, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about whether these, trees are going to be properly protected during the construction based off of what happened with the first section of the plan where the trees were supposed to be protected. But if you can look down on the left-hand side, you'll see that a lot of them were removed anyways.
Is number 10 the one that got, or is the red one above number 10 the one that got damaged during the storm?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think that was under debate, but I think it's not fair to say that it was removed due to anything but damage from a storm. I know that we have some back and forth with DPW about removal, and I prefer to leave trees if possible. But I believe that we discussed as a committee all the ones that they did end up removing. I believe the 3 at the bottom that were red, it was decided they had to be removed in order for them to access the back gates. Is that
actually, if you look over at, say, I believe it's number 7 was right on the property. Oops, I'm sorry. That's 45. That was right on the property line. It was protected. It was flagged. Took it down anyways. And then there were several others.
Yeah, I guess 45 is literally the only one I haven't addressed. I'm not sure what the deal was with 45. I thought the 3, there were 51, 54, and what is that, 56? I can't read it. I thought those ones I thought we'd had conversation in committee. Am I making that up? Does anyone else remember that? About those 3 in terms of them accessing the back with machines?
2 of those.
Yeah, we took a vote on it.
2 of those that were supposed to be removed because of need aren't on the list. So there's additional trees that were taken down that were supposed to be protected and were not. One was an oak and one was a crabapple. So, I'm just concerned because once the damage happens, you can't repair it. You're never going to get these trees back if they are not protected. And unfortunately, the DPW doesn't seem to either know or care whether they are there or not.
So Jim.
Yeah.
So Jim, what we have to think about, as a group is what we can do to minimize that from happening. The only thing that comes to my mind, as you do in any business, is when you've got an issue, whether it be personnel or anything else, you document. One of the things that we could do is go out there, and I'm not going to be running around out there right now with the COVID-19 situation, but as that eases up and they start to work again, we get out there and do a lot of photography, just cell phones, whatever, and just try to make records of what the trees look like and what the construction area looks like around the trees as things evolve, and put that on our Roberts Field Facebook or website. That's going to at least set up a situation where everybody's aware of what's going on. We can voice comments along with that along the way, and it will defend the DPW when they're doing things they need to do, so that we don't come back and give them a hard time about that they did something we didn't want, and vice versa if they do something that is against our plans. That becomes obvious. But documenting is probably the most effective thing we can do, Jim, that I can think of. It's gone a long way up to this point. You've done all your tree inventories, and I think it's paid off huge. And I can't imagine how things would be different if you hadn't done that.
To your point, Barry, if you go to the next slide, Marcus, the inventory trees are noted on, this is Steve's site plan. So we've incorporated the inventory data into his site plan, and all the trees are marked. Steve's communicated that he intends to put up the silt fence barriers around it, the tree protection zones as they're identified in the master plan. I think we just need to make sure that when the construction actually starts to happen, that those things happen. But I think this is a good step that he's incorporated the inventory trees into his plan.
I'm excited to see he's incorporated them. I am curious about the difference between the previous slide and this slide in terms of particularly around the playground. There seem to be a number more trees on the previous slide that were protected than are listed here.
This is his site plan, and the trees that he's noted on here are ones that are sort of in the field of construction. So that's why it's not a total list. That list that you looked at in the slide before is our total inventory list. These are just the ones that sort of are have a risk posed to them by construction.
Right. If you go back to the previous slide, Marcus, for a second, there's a couple of trees at the top. There's a couple trees, 7, 8, I think, listed there, and it looks like there's only one listed on the next slide.
Sorry about here.
Yeah. So I assume if one of them is in effect, then the other one should be as well.
Well, several of them, 10, 11, I guess that's 7, are inside the fence. So I guess Steve is probably looking at it.
Oh, is 7 inside the fence?
Yeah,
Okay.
so this one here
That's
is
the
outside the fence. All
Okay.
the ones inside the fence aren't, because they're inside the fence.
And
Right.
then-
I got the lower down ones. I didn't realize that 7 was inside the fence. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, what's the significance of saying inside the fence? I'm not.
They're
Because
not
they're not
doing
gonna be in the way
construction
of
inside the fence,
construction.
so it wouldn't be affected when he's doing the site. His current site plan is for new construction, which isn't going to be inside the playground fence.
But it does bring up another issue, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of it or not, is when they install the irrigation, particularly inside that play area. This also brings up a concern. Well, will those trees be protected, and will the pipes be routed around the critical root areas?
Well, Jim, that's almost a different thing. You got to also
Yeah.
think about the new trees that you're planning or laid out to be planted, and they have to what kind of irrigation do they need? So that's a whole, it's almost like a separate sub-project of this whole thing to work through that, right?
Yeah, although I think Jim has a point. If this is his construction plan, if the irrigation is being done as part of this plan, is that true? Anyone know whether the irrigation is part of the plan that this sheet applies to?
It's part of phase 2.
That's my.
It is, yeah, I know it's part of phase 2, yeah. So this
then
is
I assume it
technically-
is-
This is technically phase 2 site plan, so, yeah.
Right. So I think Jim has a point that things within the playground should not be forgone unless they're not planning on doing irrigation work in there. Did they already run lines into the playground?
No, I don't
No.
think they've done
No.
anything as far as they're just talking about drilling the well.
All right, there was a discussion at
Coming
one point
down.
of them putting sleeves within the playground so that they wouldn't have to
Those have
construction
already
in
been
there?
installed, but I don't think anybody on this committee is aware of where they are exactly.
Okay, but if they've already done the sleeves, I just don't know how irrigation systems work. But if they've already done the sleeves, does that mean that they won't actually be doing construction per se within?
Oh, no, that just means that they won't have to rip up the sidewalk to install the irrigation lines. They'll
Okay,
just slide the pipe.
but if they're just sliding it in, then assumedly they already had to take the trees into account, so they're not already, whatever they do next wouldn't be,
That is
Well-
my concern. We
well,
don't-
whatever they do next, it's only going to be along the lines of where the sleeves are, which they've already done, which means they've either already affected it or they haven't.
Yes, the
right?
problem often with irrigation is plumbers like to run things in straight lines.
But they're
So,
not going to change where the lines are at this point, right?
well, you can also
already-
you can route the pipes around the tree zones rather than through them.
Okay,
But
but they're not going to
I think what-
reroute things if they've already
Right.
put sleeves in, right? The sleeves are
Well,
already there.
The sleeve is there, but it comes out, and then after that, they can reroute the pipes that come out of it.
So I
Okay,
think-
but aren't the
I
pipes
think the
that come
sleeves
out
are
of it
just for
outside the
the
playground?
sidewalks.
Right, so what I can do, I'll reach out to Steve and just ask him, as part of this plan, can you incorporate inside the park, any
Could we get
additional information that could affect the trees with the irrigation plan?
a copy of the irrigation plan?
I don't
That
think it
also-
exists yet.
Yeah, I don't, yeah. I mean, when it
Okay,
does,
well, whenever
very
they
good.
get a plan,
Yeah,
then we get a copy of it.
I'll ask him too.
It's a lot easier to make changes on the plan than it is to try to repair the damage after it's been done.
I
That's
agree.
my thought.
True.
All right, so I'll ask him for a plan for the irrigation plan, and then I'll also just reference, any impact to trees with inside the park due to the irrigation plan, and see if we can get that mapped out here on the drawing.
That
And
would be great.
for context, the blue circles and the blue text is the information from the inventory that we took for Steve to add into this. So if there's a circle and no X, that means that he didn't survey that particular tree. But he's supposed to add those back into his site plan. And then the descriptors are what was either missing or incomplete on his site plan. So this was sent over to him, and he was going to update his plan, last I heard.
So,
Okay.
so I'm wondering if this would be proper to Jim, I'd like to sign you up to do something. Would you be able to, I don't think there's anybody else that could do this. Could you take your current plan that we just looked at with all the other trees, go through this one and see if there's any of the green protected trees on your tree plan that are not accounted for here? And so we could get a running list of the stuff that we think that DPW is not looking at, considering that they should be. Would that be a lot to do, and would it be productive, you agree?
Well,
That's what these blue circles do, Barry, except for the playground trees.
No, what I'm understanding here, tell me if I'm wrong, these blue circles represent the DPW's acknowledgement, these are the trees that they recognize they need to be protected, right?
Now, the ones that have an X in the middle, the X's are the ones that he surveyed. The ones that don't have an X in the middle, those are the ones that that he didn't survey, that need to be added to his site plan. So that what you're asking for has already been done, with the exception of the playground trees.
Okay, I guess I'm not understanding what I'm looking at here. Yeah, well, I'll just state it again and then we can move on and discuss it offline. I want to make sure that everything on Jim's original plan is accounted for in the plan the DPW produced. So what
I
we're
agree.
what
I
we're-
think, minus ones that are further south that might not be near where the walking track is going in. I agree that Jim should go through and verify that this looks like it aligns with what he had in his plan.
yeah,
Okay, so I guess we'll just, Jim, are you okay with just doing a double check? and just
Sure,
turn this over?
no
Okay,
problem.
thank you.
I can already see that there's some problems here.
Okay.
perfect. That's what we need to get captured and get fed back to the DPW.
Okay. Okay, I'll take a look at it and see what comes up, and I'll forward it to you, and you can go from there.
All
Like
right,
I
thank
said,
you,
I
Jim.
get nervous. We get one chance to drop the teacup. And once it's dropped, it's gone. You'll never get it back.
All right, in the interest of time, I think we'll move on. So Jim, thank you for looking into that. Let's see, so Bill, this is really, I think you're on the fourth projects. Do you want to go through these, or how do you want me to move through these slides for you?
Those were just my notes from a meeting that Adele called with Steve. And the current timeline action plan was Steve's timeline at that meeting.
Oh, these
So
are,
you were
okay.
asking about.
So this kind of goes in line with, okay, well, we've already kind of talked about the restriping. So that was completed.
Is HP signs, are those
Stalled, because that's
handicap
what Steve
signs,
mentioned,
or
right? Permitting has been stalled, so that's.
is the install HP signs?
I'm
is
probably
that
gonna need to go
handicap
back
signs?
to Steve with this and just see if he can give us updates based on everything that's been going on. I'm assuming all of this is gonna be delayed. At this-
HP signs or handicap signs? Handicap parking signs. And I'm sure these dates are changed based on the email that you read at the beginning of the discussion.
Exactly. So I'll take this and copy it and respond to Steve's email and just asking him for updates on all this so we can have it for next time, because I can't imagine that any of these dates are going to be accurate at this point. I mean, that's why I wanted him on this, so that he could kind of walk through these and give us updates, but I think his email kind of is pretty tough. So, okay, and we can actually kind of walk through some of this already. I mean, refresh.
Before you move on, I think it's important that we discuss under questions what the expectations are for how this committee would coordinate with the DPW on moving forward and on some of the things that we talked about, and then specifically choosing the exercise equipment and then locating it around the park is one example.
Is there a slide in here for the exercise equipment, or? I thought there was.
No.
Oh, I thought there was one. Okay. Yeah, I mean, as far
My
as
understanding is that they've pretty much, they're going to move forward
right.
with their plans, and I don't know, the exact quote was, "We've got it from here." So I know they've had meetings with the vendor. He referenced that in the conversation you guys had, the email you guys had.
Mm-hmm. So I can ask.
I don't know how much
goes in the exercise equipment and where they're going to be putting as part of the site plan, and see if he has that mapped out, and then we can, I think, as a committee, review it and say whether we agree with it, or if whatever we disagree, we can provide feedback to Steve. What do you guys think?
And the bigger question, I think, is if are they willing to accept the feedback?
Well, I mean, they'll accept it because I'll send it to them. Whether or not they're going to, change anything or do anything, I think will have to be determined, right?
I think we have to.
If they send us what they have as far as plans, and then we determine at that point that there's changes we want to make, we can advise on those changes. And if he's not willing to, in a reasonable fashion, accommodate those changes, then we'll take appropriate action there by seeing who can help us out with making it happen, right? Similar to with the parking lot, we're making recommendations. If they're deciding to not, take those recommendations and run with them, I think, an explanation as to why would be helpful. And then, if we want to press the issue further from there, we can do so. But first step is, I think we got to know what it is that they're doing, so we can determine whether or not we agree with it or not. At this point, we don't know.
Sounds good, Marcus.
I'll take that action, and I'll ask Steve if he can provide us with a list of the equipment that they're thinking about adding, and then where they're thinking about putting it, and then we can decide as a committee what we think about it.
Marcus, when you talk to him, make sure you let him know if there's anything we can do to make their life easier. That might, maybe we can help to document and review with him their plans, so to speak. Anything that can take a burden off of him that could help us accomplish our objectives would be, might pay some big dividends. So keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely, of course. I'll definitely do that, because again, we're all in this together. We're here to help each other out. So
Yeah.
If there's some stuff that he would like our input on or help with, absolutely. All right, so let's see. So at least on the existing projects, talked about that. We talked about that. The refreshing the wooden picnic tables. That's something I'm going to be working on. So I'll just, to your point, Bill, when I'm ready to go about and do that, I'll just reach out to Steve and say, hey, am I okay to go there this Saturday to work on that, to make sure that it's okay. And I'll just let everybody know, hey, I'm going to be there, so that we don't have a lot of people, trying to do two things.
A couple of notes on that.
Yeah.
I have some leftover paint from the buddy bench, the green.
Okay.
I know we talked about that I can get to you. I've got some metal spray paint if you want to paint the legs. And the other thing is I'd like to ask that we move those tables out of the natural play area and put them over in the 2 to 5 area like we had talked about. Because right now they're underneath the maple tree. I think it's a maple, right?
Right.
Maple?
Yeah.
And then adjacent to the shade structure, and it kind of impedes in the animal track section. So
Right.
I think we talked about it being more functional for the 2 to 5 area anyway. And plus there's a tree over there, so it would provide some shade.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I can take care of that. That's not a problem. That's a good idea. Anybody have any?
Adele was Adele was working on the state funding. We secured the $50,000 from Senator Barrett, but she's also working on trying to get some of the environmental bond money freed up. I know she and I had roughed out a plan for surveys to try to help identify the regionality of the park's use. But I'll just want to say that she's working on that. So
Okay.
it'd be best to wait until she's with us.
Okay, good. And the rest is really going through your slides with the Friends Roberts Field. As far as new projects go,
I'd like to add something
tackle that
here.
yet, or?
And I don't know where it fits into the scheme of things, but to help the trees that are inside the play area survive, I'd really like to see the surface area underneath them mulched with wood chips. This is going to help them survive the compaction that they're getting. I think this is something that would be fairly easy to do and would, I think, helpful in extending the life of the trees, and also the large oak on the property line that was damaged during construction. That should also be mulched.
I know Steve Callahan was trying to arrange a mulch spreading day, kind of a spring cleanup before everything closed down. So it might just be a matter of coordinating with him on that, Jim.
I think that has already been done from the aerial photographs that were shown. So this would probably be in addition.
No, they didn't spread. They spread some chips, but he hasn't done. He had
Okay.
he had
All
plans
right.
to do a lot more.
Oh, okay. Very good then.
Okay, good. All right, so I know we got 13
So
minutes.
Jim, you'll talk to Steve then to check out whether he can cover the areas you're concerned about?
I think it would be probably more appropriate that a member of the committee do that.
Do you want
Okay,
to
I
to my
think you
list?
probably need to specify in writing then exactly what you're looking for in order for any of us to talk to Steve clearly about where you expect the wood chips.
Jim, can you just send me an email on that, and then I'll add it to my response to
No
Steve?
problem.
Okay. Perfect. All right, well, I want to make sure we try to get through everything. I know it's, again, it's a packed agenda. I was pretty bullish in thinking we'd get through everything in full detail. But I know, Bill, you got a lot you want to go over the Friends of Roberts Field. So why don't we jump to that? And then, anything we don't get to, we can table and address next time. So I'll move on to, do you want to talk about, okay, the fundraising at all, Bill?
I'll do it quickly. So fundraising ended on October 31st of last year. In total, we gave the town of over $90,000 in funds. That's not including the extra $50,000 that we got from Senator Barrett's office. If you add in the value add from the sweat equity from the community build, in total, the value add that we have is 170. And then if you add in the 50, we're at almost $220,000 in value.
That's great.
So next slide, unless somebody has questions. So these are the projects that we've been working on over the winter and now into spring and summer. And there's specific slides that follow each of these if you want to go on and move on. But we just got LeMazier finished the last 3 of the 6 sitting stones, and the DPW picked those up and installed those. My plan is to attach the engraved sponsor plaques to them once the temperatures get a little warmer consistently, so that the epoxy holds better, because we had some issues with a couple of the plaques not holding. But everything's in place now. So next slide. The founder plaque. So we're going over the sponsor list now and should have that finalized in a couple of weeks, I hope, 2 to 4 weeks. Then we'll need to order it. And then LeMazier is going to donate the stone and engrave in the area so that the plaque is recessed. And hopefully we'll be able to, we'll see, get that new stone set in place in the fall. Okay. The kinetic wind sculpture, it's currently being built now. There's some pictures of the actual construction over on the right-hand side. That's a drawing of the schematic of the drawing. It's going to be a volunteer installation, and the plans are being reviewed by the town's building commissioner. And it will likely be finished with automotive paint that will change colors when it rains. So it'll those icons at the very top are what are going to be on the arms or the branches of the sculpture. And so each of those will be painted sort of different colors, so it'll have that feel to it. That's going to be placed inside the butterfly garden, that round garden in the back. So next slide.
The idea about the paint. That's awesome.
Hey, Bill, is there any kind of a video or pictures? I thought we'd seen something earlier of what this guy has done. I'd be curious if there's some precedent that he's done that we could look at to see what this kind of thing looks like when it's done? Do you know if there's anything?
No, what we have is, we have the drawing and we have those in progress pictures, and that's the extent of it right now.
Okay, thanks.
So the tree walk, the tree committee purchased 12 engraved tree tags that have been engraved. That's a map on the right-hand side. And Jim and I were talking about, before everything closed down, talking about going and installing those on the 12 trees. So the tags have that information, the QR code, and that links to a specific fact sheet for each individual tree.
Question, Bill, have you picked those tags up?
No, I thought you were going to do that.
Ah, okay. Would you please do it since you dealt with them originally?
Sure.
And then let me know and we'll go put them on sometime when we get the chance.
Okay. So next slide. This is the garden plan that Sandy Rainey's working on with Weston. So they've identified this list of plants for each garden. And the next step on this is that they will provide an itemized list of the plants and the plant sizes that we can then take and sort of try to find donated plants to offset some of the costs, and then we'll fill in with whatever we don't get with paid plants from Weston. These won't go in until the irrigation system is put in place. So this may actually end up being delayed some based on where we are now.
Yeah, probably right.
Hey, Bill, do you know if there's what the plan is to request donation plants? Have we sent anything out or communication, or is there a plan to communicate to Facebook or something like that? Says, you know.
Yeah, once we have the final list of plants and plant sizes that we're looking for, then we'll actively ask people for those. But until we get the list, because we don't want to get a ton of unnecessary or duplicative plants. So we want to make sure that we kind of work smart with this. Plus, we don't want to really get all these plants and not be able to install them until next spring, and we have to overwinter everything.
Good point.
So, go ahead. Playground signage drafts. So this is a list of all of the playground signs that we've been working on. Barry and I have primarily been working on these, with the exception of the one sign, the large sign at the very bottom that says the wildlife sanctuary. All of these signs were signs that we identified as a committee that we wanted to create. We hope to have these installed by August or September, or maybe even possibly sooner. Depending on when the economy opens back up and printers are printing again. These are going to require volunteer installation. The top two are we'll go into detail on these in the next. The top two are the ones that are going to go on the map kiosk in the front of the playground. The next section are the natural play area signs and the two garden markers. And then the bottom, as I mentioned, that's the walking trail kiosk sign that's currently in place, just redesigned so that it matches everything. It's consistent with all the other signs. And then the two signs next to it are the tree walk sign and then the pollinator park sign. And I'll show you specifically where those are going to end up going.
Do you want me to go to the next slide, Bill?
As we go through, real quick, I just want to say that if you spend some time with these, if you have feedback, we welcome the feedback. If you want to email it to bill@friendsofrobertsfield.org, that'd be great.
Are these signs individual files somewhere that we can see them up close?
You go to the next page.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, are these slides being shared somewhere?
No, not currently. But I think you should be able to get whatever information you need off of these. If it doesn't work, then you can email me and I can send you the files. They're rather large.
I mean, Marcus, can you share with the rest of the committee the slides that you used today?
Yeah, I believe everything's posted, right, Bill? Like this deck is posted?
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
so-
that's what I was trying to
Yep,
establish.
it's
Okay.
it's all available.
Keep in mind, these pages were actually created, I think, a couple weeks ago. I know that his history plaque has been updated.
No, these are current. Barry, these are current. These are all current slides.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you.
So on the left-hand side is the main kiosk in the playground, and you'll see a picture of what the existing sign looks like, and then the back is currently empty. So we're working with the town to update the rules, and then we're going to update the map. The map will be, we actually found an artist that's going to render a pen and ink watercolor map for this sign of the entire playground. And then also do one for the natural play area, which we'll look at in a second.
So are you saying that picture that's on the top will be replaced by whatever the artist will do?
Correct. That's just a placeholder. That's a
Okay.
placeholder to set expectations for what we would expect that the style of the drawing would look like. But it'll
Looks
obviously
great.
be of the playground. So
That makes a
it'll
lot
be
more
a
sense.
landscape perspective. So next, and just as we move through these, understand that we try to, they go back. As we move through these, try to understand that we try to match the graphic standards that were set forth on the first line by our previous designer. So the sign next to it is the history sign. We'll go on the back. We've gathered a lot of historical information and pictures and put those into this sign. So you can look at those when.
So
spend
am
some
I
more time
right
with
that the helmet thing has been changed from a don't use them to a warning?
That's one of the things that the town is discussing now.
Okay.
So this is the current draft. These are all drafts, so it could definitely change. But that's been the discussion.
Okay.
So next slide. So the back one. The natural play area sign. So if you look at
This one or the next one?
the next one.
Okay.
So if you look at the picture in the lower left-hand corner, those gold stars show where the location of these signs would be. So the star that's closest to the bottom is the big sign, the natural play area sign, the front and back. And then those other two signs are the garden markers. The natural play area sign, the front of the sign is intended to sort of orient people and to let them know what is in the natural play area. And then again, that's a placeholder image that'll be replaced with an actual drawing, landscape perspective drawing. And then the second set of information is information to try to drive people into the other parts of the park. And you'll notice that on the under the footstep icons, there's a QR code again. You'll see a lot of QR codes on the next sign, but that QR code links to the walking trail map that people can click on and link. And there's also a tiny URL that will link to the same document. And all these documents are housed by the town on their server, so they're good and safe and can be updated if necessary.
Oh, looks really
The
good.
back of the natural play area has two broad sections. The left-hand side is the animal track section, which corresponds to the concrete impressions that are in the bluestone pathway. So each one of these animals, there's a picture, there's a letter, and in each of the concrete impressions, that the letter is next to the tracks. So kids can go to the track, see a track, see the letter, go to the sign, and see what animal made it. On the lower right-hand corner of each of these pictures is the actual track, so that'll help too with identifying. And then the top right-hand corner is a QR code that does link to PDF files with animal fact sheets, so kids can get more information about the animals. And all these QR codes are all active and live now. The section on the right-hand side is the tree walk section. Same kind of concept. the numbers correspond to the tree tags that we looked at earlier. The leaf, so when a person would go and find the tree tag, it would, like for number 1, they would see that, and then the profile of the leaf is there on the lower right-hand side, and then the top is the QR code that links to a fact sheet for more information about each individual tree. And then at the bottom, there is, on the animal fact sheet, there's a link to the directory for all of the animal fact sheets. And then at the bottom, underneath the tree walk, there's the tree walk map that we looked at earlier, the PDF for that. So people could scan that or type in the URL, download the map, and then follow the map around the town, around the park. If you look to the left, those 2 small green signs, that just sort of shows the approximate scale of the signs. So they're roughly 4 feet wide by 3 feet tall. And they'll be mounted with, they'll be sort of sandwich mounted around 2 6-inch by 6-inch cedar posts that'll be cemented in the ground. And we've rounded the corners to make the corners kid friendly and kid safe. The 2 bottom signs are smaller signs that'll be garden markers describing the gardens, and then with the warning to please keep off the rock wall. So those will replace the those red corrugated signs that are in place there now.
Have we gotten clearance that that the town is okay with us having a single sign there? Are we gonna get pushback from them about having 1 sign, or?
If we do, we can print another one, but that's something that we'll cover off on.
Right. Well, I think they all look really
active
good.
Communication right now. Thank you. Can we go to the next sign? So this is the existing map kiosk. There's a picture of it on the left-hand side. And so just to be consistent with the designs of the other signs, we redesigned that sign to match. The gold stars that are on that wildlife sanctuary sign aren't going to appear on the finished sign. They're just there to show you where these signs are going to go. So the big wildlife sanctuary sign will be in the big gold star where it says you are here. The tree walk sign on the right hand side, that will be the pond side star, and then the star that's close to the Jonathan Lane trail entrance. So that way people can see those, and there again that has the QR code and the URL for people to download the PDF so they can do the tree walk. And then the pollinator park sign will be in the pollinator park. And those 2 pictures on the left-hand side are the existing posts that were put in place by the Boy Scouts that these 2 smaller signs will be screwed to, or affixed to, I should say.
And these are all going to be made out of that plasticized material that the current one is?
So the wildlife sanctuary map will probably be a thinner material, but the 2 other smaller signs will be the same material, that black PVC material that we use for the map inside the playground and for the Friendship Park sign on the entry kiosk. So it'll be beefy, and if it's we probably will add some sort of a wooden substrate to the 2 smaller signs just to give it a little more strength, because it's going to probably take a good beating. Any okay, so that's it for the signs, I think. Is there the next slide? So again, if anybody at home is watching, or if any of you guys have any comments on those after you spend some time with those, please email feedback to bill@friendsofrobertsfield.org. This is the shade tree plan. Jim has identified potential areas for new trees to be added to the playground with the idea of adding more shade. We have earmarked money with the town to pay for 5 trees, and that's pretty much it. The town wants us to coordinate with them on location, and ideally we would be able to coordinate with a volunteer group to install them. Jim, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, no. A little busy, that's all, but it is what it is.
Sorry, did you say 5 trees? So about the other ones, we're going to try to work towards fundraising for those, or?
What other ones?
It says plant 5 trees, but there's a lot of circles in here. There's a lot more than 5 trees. So I'm trying to figure out whether, are we just planning on doing 5 of these various choices, or?
Yes. Jim, do you want to add anything?
No, I think this is going to have to be determined by the town. If we have to coordinate with them, you know, that will probably be the determining factor. I would assume that it's going to be the green and the one by the shade structure. I don't know. You know, I think that's up to you folks where you want those trees. But I think that would probably give you the best bang for the buck. Particularly number C, get a little shade on the sandbox. And
I agree.
then the A's to get a little shade on the, what is it, under 5 playground. So that's my thought. That would be up to you folks.
Okay.
Next slide, Bill, or?
Yes, please. I think that's it.
I think that's it. So is there anything else that, anything else you wanted to address from the front of Roberts Field, that what you guys were doing? I think we covered everything, but just want to give you that opportunity one more time.
No, I believe that's it.
I just wanted to welcome Tamika. Thanks for joining us, and reach out because you probably have a lot of questions from the meeting. So feel free to reach out and to Bill, myself, or anybody, and
Yeah, me too.
we'll do what we can to help bring you up to speed quickly.
Yeah, there's only like 5 years worth of data to, you know, try to sort through.
A lot of it undocumented, so yeah, we'll.
I started to look at it and I got a little overwhelmed, but yeah.
We got some work to do, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, I appreciate everybody joining. I think at this point, we've covered everything that we can. I know, Elizabeth, you're going to talk to Steve about the parking, and then I have my laundry list of things that I'm going to go over with him. Jim, you're going to send me the information about the mulch.
Right.
I can add that to the list. But if there's anything else anybody would like me to include in my communication to Steve, just send me an email and let me know. I'm happy to consolidate everything and kind of be the single point of contact to keep it streamlined. So at this point, I don't know.
Okay, so sorry, just a question. So you want to streamline it, but I will separately still address the parking?
If you want to just send me an email, Elizabeth, and then I'll add it to it. It's fine.
Okay, I think
it might
I think
easier.
that'd be good to get one point of contact to him. But if you could just share with us whatever his response is as you get it, so we're all up to date on it.
Yeah, I'll take what he sends me and I'll share it with the group.
All right, great. Sounds great.
Got it.
And
As
if,
far as, oh, go ahead.
if anyone needs help on something, let me know. I mean, at this point, I don't really know what to contribute or what I can contribute. So just throw stuff at me.
Could we jump back to that slide that had the other projects? There was just one that I wanted to, something that I could work on now.
Sure.
And that's the tic-tac-toe log is taking kind of a beating, and it's got a big broken chunk out of it. And wanted to suggest, this one, wanted to suggest that we replace that with a new log. And potentially maybe even a second log that might have checkers. We got the town to agree that we could use some wooden discs instead of rocks for the the play pieces, because they had an issue with the rocks because of throwing and stuff. But they did agree that we could try out, we could use log pieces, little less than 1 ounce log pieces.
So does that mean that they don't want any rocks within the playground anymore?
That's correct.
So does that mean that Sandy's bucket of rocks is no longer part of the plan?
That's correct. And she's aware of that.
Okay.
So are we in agreement that, or does anybody have any feelings about replacing that particular log? And then does anybody have any feelings about adding a second checkers log? If the town's in agreement with that.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I think if we had a second one, I think that's great. I think kids love it. So
I agree.
the issue is, anybody have any concerns with that? I think you're good.
Okay, we'll move forward trying to find the pieces and get them made then. The other thing is the pondside shade structure. If we want to move forward with that, I think we're going to need to start a fundraising plan for it. We'll need to talk to the Friends of Roberts Field Board to see if they want to take on the fundraising for that project. But before we did that, I wanted to see if how you guys felt about the shade structure moving forward, and then maybe expanding that to include replacing the 3 wooden benches that are there. They're in pretty bad shape with stone seating like we have in the playground, so everything is more consistent.
That works for me. I definitely think we should move forward with having the shade structure. I think there was discussion of having it for picnics and having it for when people skate, being able to sit there. So I think we should definitely move forward with that. I don't care one way or another about the benches. So if we can get rocks from LeMazier or whatever, that works for me.
Any other comments on that? So that generally everybody's in consensus that we want to move forward with those.
I think so. Yeah.
And then the last thing is the park welcome area, something that wasn't included in. That's going to require sort of fleshing out a plan for that and what it's going to actually include. If you look at the master plan, that it included possibility of adding a covered bridge over the that existing bridge that's there between the shack and the playground now. Adding a carved stone sign that said Roberts Field, adding some sort of a map kiosk with signage, and then maybe a sign on the back that paid tribute to the scout projects that had happened in the past. So there was a number of things that were going to go into place there if we wanted to move forward with that. And I think it's important to decide if we do want to, because Steve's going to need to sort of accommodate his pathways in that area around the welcome area if we want to move forward with it.
I don't see any reason not to move forward with it. Is there a reason we wouldn't move forward with it? Do we have the Shack's input on doing stuff on that bridge?
We
would need to do that. That'd be part of the process.
We need to get their input, but I've had conversations with them in the past and seem to be very, very positive on Roberts Field for obvious reasons. The only reason I could think of, by the way, for not moving forward on this welcome area and the things that Bill mentioned, was if it competes for funds or resources for other things that are more important, which begs, in my mind, whether we want to have a way to do more, document our priorities on some of these things. We may not have an issue. I don't know. Maybe I'm creating a problem that doesn't exist, but that would be that's the only thing I could think of why we might not want to do something, simply from a prioritizing point of view.
Well, if it's a prioritizing point of view, then I would say I definitely wouldn't take it off the list. If we want to decide where it ends on the priorities, I think we have that conversation, but I don't think it should be, I don't think it shouldn't happen permanently. I think if we want to deprioritize it to lower down the list, that's something we can discuss. But I think it's a worthwhile thing to keep on the plan, personally.
Okay. I agree.
So would the next step then be to scope these things out, at least in a draft form, and then to try to identify what the costs are going to be?
Yeah, so is that something we'd scope or the FORF would scope?
I would say at this point we would scope it on these new projects. Yeah.
We being RFAC?
Yes.
So does anybody want to take that on?
I can pull a document together that has a list of the existing and new, I guess just the new projects based on what the master plan has, and then try to assign a cost to it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess I've lost track. Which are the new projects? I mean, I think all of these have been talked about historically.
New projects are basically what was not on the master plan.
Projects that don't have a plan to be finished.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So in reference to that, the first bullet point, the sandbox fix, I believe that the current, based on the meeting that Adele and I had with the DPW, the sandbox is not going to be addressed. They can live with the way it is now. So if we want anything different than that, we're going to need to affect it.
I definitely think that should be addressed personally. I think it's a huge issue for the playground, for all the parents who use the playground. So I think that should be prioritized personally because it makes a big difference, and it's gonna be a big source of mosquito and others issues.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, which were you just referring to? I got distracted.
The sandbox drainage problems. The fact that we ended up with an unintentional water feature that becomes a big issue. I mean, the kids enjoy it, but it's kind of, I mean, I see it as
So is this
multiple
something-
public health issues. You've got
Right.
standing water that causes multiple public health issues. Never mind laundry issues, but that's, just part of having kids.
So Lisa, I think we need to figure out, because again, these projects need, all intents and purposes, someone to spearhead each one, right? So, Bill, you're taking on the tic-tac-toe log, for example, right? If we're going to go and address the sandbox drainage issue, we need to, have somebody that's understanding what the major problems are. We got to come up with ideas on how to overcome it and fix it, communicate that with DPW. So that's a big project, right? That's not something that I think we can just solve in 5 minutes.
I also don't think it should be one person. I think the committee has to agree that we all
No,
want
we have to agree on
be
it.
done.
But I guess what I'm saying is, we could spend an hour as a committee discussing how to solve this problem, right? So I think what needs to happen is, we need to have somebody go in and investigate, okay, here's the problem, here's what DPW is saying, here's what we want to, here's 3 potential solutions, let's vote on a committee as which one solution we want to do. And if anybody has ideas that they want to share with me or let me know. I mean, again, I'll have a list with Steve and say, hey, this is still a priority for us. What ideas do you have? And then I'll communicate that back to the committee and then we can kind of go from there.
All right, so I believe it's something that should be addressed. I guess I don't have any sense how the rest of the committee feels about how important this is. Do other people? I see it as a public health issue between standing water for mosquitoes and standing water for just general bacterial growth.
I agree. I don't have any problem with addressing it. I just think we need to figure out how we're going to do it. So again,
I agree. I just want everyone who's on currently to buy in or state how they feel about it personally before we go forward with coming up with a plan.
I
Was
wouldn't
anybody
mind being-
against adding this to the list, going to Steve and addressing this as an issue?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being involved with this. I have very strong opinions about the solution. Don't know that others agree with my opinions on that. I don't know that Steve would, but my impression is, again, this may be something that you might want to bring up with Steve as to how much he wants to deal with this. I've heard things like relocating the sandbox. Um, uh, I've heard different things on this. But I guess the first thing to find out is to what extent he would like us to propose some possible solutions.
What ideas does he
Well,
have?
it sounds like they don't want to
Decide,
do
right? I
anything
think
currently, right? So I think,
Well, I'm not.
there's been ideas kicked around about moving it, about putting in some rock underneath it. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to solve the problem. I think it's just a matter of, I mean, we could sit here and talk about it for an hour and not have anything done, or I can go to Steve and say, what are our options? What are you willing to do? And then as a committee, we'll vote on it.
I think that would be good, but at the same time, ask him if he would like us to come up with some proposed solutions, or if he'd rather just deal with it. I'd hate to spend a lot of time researching and or developing drawings, only to turn around and find out that he's just going to do it his own way.
Right. I
well,
agree
it sounds like
100%.
his own way is ignoring it at this point, if I'm reading this correctly. So I think it would have to be something that we would research and then spend a lot of energy and capital to push through. So we have to all be aligned with choosing that as a priority. I think that it is going to be an issue getting DPW to take on whatever plan we come up with. But it doesn't look like they're coming up with a plan on their own. So that's why we all have to be in agreement that it's worthwhile spending our time and energy on it. Because I think it's a big issue, but yeah, none of us alone is going to make it happen, let alone convince DPW to do it. We have to be unified on it for it to be worth
Well,
I
anyone's
think we're all
time.
unified in that it's an issue and we want to address it. It's just, again, I'll go back to Steve, bring it up to him again, find out where he's at with it, what priority it is for him, and then we can go from there.
Question before we hang up, and it come from this. Can we have offline work meetings, Zoom meetings or whatever, to talk about specific things like that, where 2 or 3 of us get together, or everybody's invited, but we just have a working session on one particular problem or one area? Is that?
I don't think we can, Bill, right? I think the
I think
rules
Adele
are
has
that,
mentioned multiple times that there is a thing called a working meeting where we could do something. I just don't know the parameters of it personally. I think Adele has the details on the legality of stuff.
Yeah, I think we ought to find out about this, because this is not a meeting where we can really dive into specific problem area and really brainstorm. I mean, it's good for overview, but it's not a working meeting in that sense.
so Bill,
I
I guess,
think from an open meeting law standpoint, as long as there's not 4 or more people involved, 4 more members involved, we don't need to post it. But if there's a quorum, we have to post it.
if there's a quorum, we
So
have to.
then what's the
we have to
working
make it
meeting
public, right,
concept?
Bill?
I don't know, but you should check out with the town clerk. She could probably help you with that.
All right, I'll find out. I'll email her and Barry, it's a good point. I'll email her and ask her what the guidelines are for us to have working meetings. And if there's limitations to how many people can be involved, and if it's, it's 4 or less than 4, then we'll figure it out. But it's a good point. I'll
And even if she says, well, you have to do it the same structure as we're doing, hey, well, fine, we have a meeting, but then we just say this particular meeting is just to have a conversation about this one
right.
problem area and nothing else.
I agree. Yep. I think that'll be a good way for us to be able to move things forward and
Yeah.
tap specific projects, faster than we have in the past. So it's a good idea.
So with that in mind, when do we need to meet next? And can we do it by Zoom again?
Yeah, I don't see why we can't do it with Zoom again. As far as when we can meet next, I can put up a couple dates a couple weeks from now and see if that works for the group and send that out to everybody. I mean, we still have a lot to cover, so I guess I can set something for 2 weeks from now Does that work for everybody? And then that way I should have hopefully enough information back from Steve and we can get some updates on projects. And then Barry, I'll look into what we can do from a working meeting perspective, and maybe between now and then we can maybe have 2 of those. And then we can provide everybody with updates on where we're at in 2 weeks.
That seems reasonable to me.
That sounds good.
Okay, perfect. I will do that.
Nice job in running your first Zoom meeting, Marcus.
Yes, particularly with the Zoom edition.
Thank you. Thank you. We're all learning here. Again, we're all adjusting to this new situation that we're in. So always appreciate everyone's flexibility and understanding as we do this together. So thank you. And I guess at this point, does anybody want to call the meeting to an end?
I propose adjourning. I don't remember.
Motion to adjourn.
I forget the formality of it.
Someone want a second adjourning? I don't know. Then
I'll
we
second
vote
it.
on.
I'll second
Sure.
it.
Can we
Okay.
vote? I think aye.
Guys, we really have to do this properly. So I think we need to wait. Marcus, can you look up the rules and make sure we do this right before we end the meeting?
I'm sorry, say that again, Barry?
Just kidding. That was a bad joke.
Oh.
Wasn't sure. Sometimes sarcasm doesn't come over Zoom well.
I thought you were joking, but I couldn't 100% tell. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Just a quick thing. I know we're going to have to provide meeting minutes from this, so you'll just need to follow up with Justin. I guess
Justin wasn't able to attend, so I'm going to ask him to watch this so that he can get up to speed and see if he'll put the meeting minutes together.
Yeah, I know that the town clerk's going to require it, and I don't think that we've provided meeting minutes from the last meeting in June of last year. So we want to follow up with that as well.
I'll ask him about that as well. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Stay safe.
Appreciate it. Stay
Okay.
safe. Stay healthy.
Stay
We'll talk
healthy.
soon.
Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.